Hello guys, in this video I'm going to show you everything you need to know how to create a solid from a sketch in SelfCAD. I'll start with a basic example. It's actually not basic, more a complex example that someone gave me trying to convert this into a solid. And this is a very complex example because it has a lot of pieces from a perspective. You think about how you can find the proper polygons for it. This would be very difficult. So let me show you the results on this. If you go fill polygons to this, which is the basic way to fill a polygon, to convert a mesh, and you can see it tries to fill all of these outside spaces. Partially it fills over here also, and over here, and this is obviously less than desired results. If you would want to convert this into a mesh, you would have to finalize it and then play with the mesh itself, delete pieces, and then use fill polygon again on the mesh, and this would be very difficult. Okay, so first off, if you're stuck with an object like this is not the right way to make an object like this. I'll show you soon a much easier way, but if you already have an object like this and trying to fill it, the idea would be to not fill the entire thing at once, but kind of give it what to fill. So for example, if I would go, let's say select just this outside from the S, I'll go to my edge mode so I can select edges. And I'm going to marquee select this outside part. Make sure that I've selected only the outside part. And if I go now fill polygon, it knows that it has to fill only this. And in this case, look, it filled actually what I asked it to fill. So the idea of a complex shape like this is make it in pieces, and then you have to stitch them together, and it's still a lot of tedious work, but at least it could be done. And there's a difference between convex and non-convex. This, in this particular example, doesn't make a big difference. In some more complex shapes that we'll see soon, this actually can make a difference. Okay, so this is basically the solution for a complex shape. 3D shape is that you fill pieces of it, and then you stitch them together. But the correct way to create an object like this is to use 2D. I'll show first some examples 2D, then I'll come back to show why 3D is actually needed and when 3D is actually very helpful. So let's get started. I'll remove this object, and the first most easiest way how to create something in 2D is freehand drawing. Freehand drawing has a built-in method to find Boolean operations. It finds something that are holes and what is solid. So you see the red is marked as a hole. If I finalize this, it created this object perfectly fine. And if I want to bend this, I'll need to rotate this 90 degree, the same position I had it before, or I'll need to change the orientation, because you see now you don't have this orientation bending. So I can either rotate it as I said or change orientation. And in this case, you can see I can bend this object, get the same result. So this is obviously much easier to get than the previous solution. Okay, the second solution for 2D is 3D sketch. And 3D sketch is where you get all the excitement, all the more flexibility, but I'm first going to show you the same example of text, and then we'll move on to more advanced use cases. So if I go to text, the same thing, and I draw SelfCAD, and by the way, this is the default text I have over here, you can change it. And if I fill this does not create a mesh, and this creates a profile. See, it names it, you can rename it, but it's named automatically profile. And if you go fill polygon, in this case, you have just a profile. Now, if you want to create a solid, you have to do it in 2 stages. The first stage would be to create a surface, and then the next stage would be to create from the surface a mesh. So to create a surface, there's only one way, which is fill polygon, and that basically creates the surface. Now, but as you can see, it didn't remove the holes, were not removed. So what can you do? So if you think about going to face mode, you can start selecting these and playing around, and you see it will be difficult. It would take you 2-3 minutes to select them all. Not a big deal. And if you go to polygon mode, this will basically select entire polygon, so which is an issue as well. So what you can do is all of these settings, modes have advanced settings, and in polygon mode there's something called part selection, and part selection will allow you to pick out these parts, and then you can go and simply delete them and get something like this. Now, how do you convert this? This is now a surface that we want to have. How do you convert this into a mesh? And the most basic way is add thickness. You're adding thickness to it, and let's say if I add thickness of 20, and you get a solid mesh, that it's perfectly fine. And that's the same results we get from the freehand drawing. So far, it's just extra work. Convert them, fill polygons, convert them into a surface, and then add thickness, convert them into a mesh, where Freehand Drawing has done the same. So where is the benefit of this? Before I show you the benefits of this, I just want to show you some other way to convert a surface into a mesh, and that's using extrusion. But extrusion actually does not convert them into a mesh directly. It converts them into a mesh, but it's still opened. As you can see over here, it didn't close this thing over here. So there's two ways to close this. Either you do fill polygon on this mesh again. Now you go to fill polygon over here, and you fill them and you get this closed. But now you just have to an extra step where instead of using add thickness, you used extrusion, and then after extrusion fill polygon, which is just an extra step, not needed. Or, and by the way, this also created an issue where it filled the bottom over here. You see it filled back in the hole, so you'll have to remove the hole. The hole is over here done, but fill polygon, the bottom filled the hole. So this is definitely not a good solution. The reason you would use extrusion sometimes for this is, I'll show you soon other advanced use cases, but one of the ideas is if you want to keep this open, just add thickness to it. So what you can do is you can add thickness to it, and let's say I make -1. In this case, you can see this becomes a manifold mesh where it has some wall thickness, and this is kind of a hollowed text. And if you want a 3D print, say for example on filament, this may be a good solution for you to print something like this. So this is basically the basic use cases. Okay, so now let's see a more advanced use case where this could be helpful. So if I go to fill polygon again, convert this, and in this case I'll leave this and I'll add thickness to it, convert them into a surface. Let's say let's make it 30, and now we have a solid mesh. But after I have that, I'll go to the polygon selection and part selection, and I'll select these parts, and instead of deleting them, I'm going to go extrusion. In a mesh you always use extrusion. Fill polygon is used to hollow something. I mean, not fill, I mean add thickness is used to hollow and to add something extrusion. It's the same as any other application. I will take minus, let's say 10. In this case you can see I can keep this, and this would be indented. In a case I want to keep these insides and still keep them just indented. Okay, this is just a hypothetical example. It may not be perfect, so let me show you some actual use cases where this could be very helpful. I'll start by showing Freehand Drawing how it cannot be done. So Freehand Drawing, as I said before, detects automatically what it is. So if I draw something like this, it detects holes, and if I want to draw like a rectangle within this rectangle, this basically gets removed. It wouldn't allow me to do it because it's a solid, unless I go to erase mode, and if I'm in erase mode I can draw something like this. It creates an eraser. Now I can do the same if I drag and drop. Let's say I drag and drop a torus. Because I'm in erase mode, the outside's erased, inside's a fill. If I go back to the draw mode and I drag and drop, this basically would be the opposite, something like this. Now if I finalize this, I get a shape like this, and the other shape got removed because it was a hole, and in a hole everything's empty. So you can see it didn't actually allow me to do this, but this shape allowed me to do it. And as you can see, that's basically the idea. It's limited to drawing solids or drawing holes. Now why would you want something else? So let me show you the same example with some use case in 3D Sketch. So if I would go to 3D Sketch, I can freely draw anything. So let's say if I want to draw something like this, but actually I wouldn't draw it like this. In order to keep this proportional, what I will do is I will actually, let me remove the latest thing, and I'll go to add thickness. In this case, just to show you, add thickness could be used for these as well. So let's say add thickness 20, and you can see I can add this inner piece. I'll even make it more advanced, and I'll go to edit details, where I can start dragging some pieces and start designing some rooms. For example, let's say you want to make some house or whatever, and you start drawing something like this. Now if you go fill polygons on this, you can start seeing already where this is very helpful, because actually it didn't detect the outer edge somehow. I'll have to fill separately the outer side, but let's first focus on what I have. I can show this example. It's where I can take these inner pieces, I'll add thickness to it, let's say 20, and now I can take any of these, let's go to face mode, and I can take any of these rooms and start giving it different heights as I need to. So for example, this will be one height. Let's say it will be a staircase. Okay, so this could be something like this, and then let's say I'll select this, and give it a different height. Okay, something like this and whatever. So you can start seeing how you can start building stuff and do things like that. Okay, so in this particular example, I was supposed to fill the outside, but I'm not going to go into this now, why this didn't fill. I think I can just add some edges to detect it here. And by the way, to make edges like this, if you go, you have to use, instead of add thickness, you can use inset. And inset will give you this. So if you fill this, let's say if I can fill this, fill polygons, and this actually got detected, it filled this as well, and so on. So you can see sometimes you need to add additional edges to make sure what needs to be done, but this is the same use case where you can see you can select a different height for the outside and the inside and start playing with pieces, and this is not available in freehand drawing. Okay, so far I've shown you all of these use cases from 2D. So all you fill it in 2D and then you do it. So when would you do a 3D fill? Let's take some examples. So let's say I'm going to start with a basic cube, and suppose I want to make this into a house. I'm going to go to edit details, and I'm going to draw, let's say in the center here, a line like this. I'll select this edge and I'll move it up somewhere, start drawing some basic house. Okay, now suppose I want to add a line over here to make it, this part, the rooftop, separate. I can start doing this with edit details and playing, but it will be very difficult because in edit details it will not allow me to remove things that is blocking. See, it allows me to remove one, but then it wouldn't allow me to remove this. So now if I want to add, I will need to go maybe to the draw mode and maybe draw from here to here, and then maybe something like this, and then start removing this piece, and if it will allow me, you see, start removing this piece, and now I can start getting this results that I wanted. So I can take, for example, now this piece and let's say whatever, go inset and then go negative extrusion and kind of create a hole, but you get the idea. But if I want to have more control and more advanced stuff, what I can do is, let's go back, take this shapes, I'll go to my edge mode, and I'm simply going to go to select all, okay, and I'll make a copy of it. Okay, so now I have this edge. I'm going to delete this face. So this is an edge actually you could have drawn yourself in 3D Sketch. I'm just, like to show the idea. You can also copy it from others, from objects to make a profile. And in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete these inner faces. Okay, so once I delete this, I have something here that fill polygon will detect it. It's a 3D shape, but it still needs to fill in something because it needs to have, this would be, if you want to make this into a single face, this will be an end gun. Some applications will allow you to make an end gun. SelfCAD actually would not allow you, and in most cases end guns are not good practice. I haven't actually come across any reason why someone would want to use it. So basically it's bad for 3D printing, it's not manifold, all these other issues. But nevertheless, you can make in SelfCAD a triangle or a quad. So in order to make this a quad, you need to add details. Something will need to be added. So let's say if I fill this, you see you got it filled, and maybe convex, both algorithms will fill it the same way. This is relatively simple. These got detected. But if I want to have some more control, like you see how to edit this line over here, I can fill it, remove it. I can actually also go to 3D Sketch, and I can extend on this mesh. So I can, on this profile, so I can draw from here to here, let's say, and now from here to here, something like this. And now if I go fill polygons, this will actually give me a much cleaner results. It detected it can create a quad. It created a clean quads all over, and over here the triangles, over here quads. So it's only 2 triangles and everything else are quads. And this is very nice if you want to start and clean, if you want to start building the house further and so on. So this is something where 3D would be, but still, this is an example where you could have drawn this one-sided profile, 2D, and then added thickness and created this. So there's still no reason to make this 3D. So let me go back and show an example where it actually 3D starts making more sense. Move it to the next stage. Okay, so let's say I'm going to go to 3D Sketch now, and I'm going to draw a rectangle, and oops, I clicked the wrong spot. Sorry, snap to here, and I'll draw out a rectangle, something like this. And to make it more interesting, I'll go and select this part, and I'm actually going to use over here fillet to make this rounded, something like this. Okay, so now if I have this profile, this already starts being a little bit 3D because you cannot do this in one part. And now if I'm going to go to fill polygon, let's see what will happen. It actually fills it something like this. If it's a difference between the convex, it's actually a slight difference. The convex didn't fill this outside shape. And where it starts being a difference is when you have a lot of possibilities, different possibilities how to fill. So without the convex, actually it filled this shape as well. You see it's still hollow here the inside. You still need to add thickness something, but and with the convex it didn't fill this. Okay, so it's a simple example. Let's say if I can take it to the next stage, and I'm gonna make a copy of this object, and I'll move it by 50, move by 100, the size of the object. So oops, not this direction. I'm sorry, not this direction, by 100. So to make it next to this, okay. I'll merge these two profiles, and now we're going to go to the 3D sketch, and I'm going to draw again a line connecting from here to here and from here to here. Okay, so now I have a more complex shape where the fill polygon needs to find out what to do. If I go now to fill polygon, what will happen? Let's say first without the convex, you see it's already starts misbehaving. With the convex, it actually detected it nicely, but it left out this. You can see because there's different possibilities, and this to fill, you see it knew to ignore this inside and just to fill the outside, kind of the silhouette from the object. So if you really need to fill this inside, you would need to separately select them and fill them, and then merge and build them together. But in this case, I want to show you something else, that how you can actually sometimes where extrusion is needed. So how you would need to convert this into a mesh. Let's say you want to keep this as an open house. Let me just remove the profile so it's easier to see. I'll get rid of this profile. So you can see we have this house, and you can go to add thickness. If I go to add thickness, and let's say -5, so if I want to add something like this, in this case, it filled it nicely. This is fine, but there's one problem. There's a problem here where this particular piece over here got filled, and it got a little bit here. So I can fix this. I can go to add details, add some parts, lines over here, and then snap this, use snap tool, and some other options that could be done. There's a lot of ways to fix this, but it's much better if you do it immediately the correct way. So what is the correct way to do something like this? So let's say I'll go to polygon mode, and I'll select this, I'll select this, and this. This, by the way, selects more than single polygon, because in the polygon mode there's a tolerance. My tolerance was set to 4. If the tolerance would be to 0, it wouldn't select, it will select only each one separately, not entire thing. If the tolerance is much more, you see it starts selecting everything as a lot more. Okay, so nevertheless, this piece I don't want to select the polygon because I don't want to select the outside piece. I select only this, and now I'll go to add thickness to this, the same idea, -5, and we filled only this. Okay, so now I need to fill this piece. Now I can go to polygon to select this polygon, because this is no longer the same, so I can select only this, the outside. If I go now add thickness to it, it will create, you see it already gives me an option, non-manifold mesh. But let's say what will happen if I fill it now. You can see it filled it, but it didn't create the proper cut. Actually, I think it did. I'm actually not sure. There's a new feature here, not add connections. No, actually it didn't. Okay, actually something else. If I do add thickness, something like this, if you finalize it, this is, I think, not manifold. Let's take a look. Polygon mode. No, there is some issues here. This is not manifold. This is not connected to this. This is basically what you have here. It's not really as expected. Okay, so let's undo this because there's no cutting. What you need basically to do is to add a cut. You see, this is clean, and then the add thickness is not really adding a good cut. Extrusion actually has a good cutting. So let's take a -5, the same idea. And if I do -5, and I'll leave in the cut intersections, and if you leave this on, you can see here, just a second, let me turn this off, backface cooling. I'll come back to this for a second, to backface cooling. Let's see what happened. Oh, okay, so I made it -5, and it cut this entire space. Okay, so let's make it not -5, let's make it extrusion, let's make it -4.9, so it shouldn't cut this piece. And no cooling, is still, okay, I must have, oh, I see the problem. I see something doesn't make sense. Okay, I'm sorry for that. That was the issue with add thickness also here. It was flickering something. I had selected this. I thought I can use polygon selection because it was no longer, it's like this, but I didn't realize that it selected outside polygon. My mistake. Okay, so let's go just to face selection and let's select these. I'm still in polygon selection. Let's go to face selection and let's select just these faces. Okay, my mistake. I'm sorry for that. And I'll have to redo this part, show you how it could be done in both ways. Okay, so now let's say if I go to add thickness to this, let's say -5, and as you can see now, let's finalize it. Let's go to polygon mode or face mode. You can see this becomes a solid. There's no cut over here, and this basically created a non-manifold mesh. Okay, so let's try now extrusion, and I thought this has to cut, not this. I have to select this again. Let me undo, keep the selection. Okay, and let's go extrusion, and let's extrude this by 5, -5, because there's no problem to cut here 5. Somehow I wanted to cut this, so I needed to keep something. But if I make -5, it still gave me this message non-manifold because it was non-manifold at that time. But once I finalize this, let's take a look first. It created a cut over here. Now let's fill this, fill polygon. I'll go fill polygon to fill this piece over here. And this is filled. And now what you can see here is if I go again to extrusion, let's say just select anything, doesn't matter. You see the message is no longer showing that it's not filled. That's basically, it's no longer showing that it's not manifold because the object is now perfectly manifold because the extrusion created a cut. So an example like this, you would be much better off first filling the inside, okay, and then filling this. And by the way, this I didn't draw straight. Let's flatten this. I'll use the flatten tool to move them down, or flatten tool wouldn't work. Somehow it's not flattening. I'm not sure why. Maybe it is flat. I'm just looking at a different angle. Could be it is flat. But anyways, this is where the extrusion way of converting is very good. In this case, I use both. I use this and use that. So let me go, because I use the backface calling, let me show you what this is about. This is basically backface calling. It's a common thing what this is doing. This shows only inner faces, not outer faces. I mean only outer faces, not inner faces. And if something is flipped, it will show you basically you wouldn't see the things that are flipped. So what the solution is, you go to flip normals, and flip normals will fix it, everything. Now everything is fixed, regardless if I am backface calling on or off, the object seems the same, everything. If you want to now flip it and see it from inside out, you can flip again, and now flipped all geometry. And now if you see backface calling on, you see only the outside, not the inside, and basically, I mean only the inside, not the outside, I'm sorry, not the outside. So if you have to flip it back, it will show you fixed flip normals. This is actually very important when it comes, because if you see when you work with extrusion or add thickness, sometimes you have to use positive, sometimes negative, and sometimes it works counter to what you think. You think it would be negative would be going inside and positive would be going outside, and sometimes you see it works the other way around, and that means that the object is flipped, and you have to use the flip normals. Now flip normals, you can flip individual faces. I can select the face, individual face, and flip it like everything else. You see now you don't see this face, it's flipped. Or you can use, I can just undo this, or you can flip entire object. Now if you choose the entire object, if some faces are flipped, let's say for example, let me flip this. I'm flipping the normal, so these are, you can see through it now. And let me make sure just I deselect this. Okay, so deselected, let's go to this mode. And now if you go again to flip normals as an entire object, not as that face, just as an entire object, it will first try to fix it. And you see fixed flip normals orientation, this will fix it. And only once it's completely fixed, and if you go flip normals, then it will flip the entire object. And then the next time we'll flip it back and fix it. So that's basically how this works. So this is mostly the part from how you convert. So in short, the easiest solution, the best solution is always using 2D. 2D is solving almost every use case. And in most objects that you create could be created in 2D. And 2D is very advanced. It keeps all of the edges inside, and that's very good. When it comes to 3D, there are certain use cases you need to use 3D. Like with this example where 3D could be very helpful, we create an object like this in one piece. You don't have to use stitch and school boolean. You can keep clean faces. And by the way, if this is not clean over here, this was added not from the fill polygon, this was added from the extrusion. So what I will do later is you can go to edit details to remove this, and this you see you can't remove because it's needed, but I can remove this at least and clean this up. And other than that, you got a clean mesh over here. So it's basically where this comes in handy. But overall, the flow is to either freehand drawing, which does everything for you automatically, or if you want to use 3D sketch or copy profiles from anything else, you first have to convert it into a surface, and then converting a surface into a profile, into a mesh, is either add thickness, the default way, or extrusion, and then use either fill polygons or add thickness to it. I hope this was helpful, and let me know if you have any questions.